Well, welcome back to the Down the Road studio here at the Scott Learning Center. I'm your host, Jay Mahaffey, and I got a couple of out-of-town guests with me today. They're from the great state of Texas. Y'all introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Scott Stanislav, technical agronomist for the southern part of the state.
And Corey Thompson, north of him, covering West Texas.
Well, I thought today we'd start out a little different. In honor of them being from the state of Texas and coming all the way to Mississippi to see us today and record a podcast and hopefully contribute a little information, we're going to introduce a new segment today. We call this segment Older Than Dirt. And that's all about a little bit of history and trivia. I find that cotton people are rather sentimental and like to talk about what's gone on in the past because the past influences our present and, the future's yet to be written. But I think we can learn things that are useful for that purpose. So I'll ask y'all a question. What year was the high U.S. cotton acres planted? And what was the yield?
So in 1925 in the U.S., there was 46 million acres planted and averaged 174 pounds.
That's right. And in Texas, what was the high planted acres and what year?
So in 1925 as well.
That's right.
And it was 19 million acres.
Yeah, 18.44 million acres. And just to contrast that to the sort of yield levels that we see today, the 2025 Texas yield average was 629 pounds.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
The acres.
And the yield improvement.
Total acres. And during that time frame, I think about it where I grew up in Central Texas, there used to be a lot of cotton grown there. And now it's corn country.
Yep.
So,
what I found interesting that just did some quick math, in 1925, based on those numbers, there would have been 16.7 million bales produced. And 25 on 9 million acres of cotton, U.S. average 900 pounds. We produced 100,000 more bales on quarter of the acres.
Made some progress somewhere along the way, huh?
A little bit.
Yeah. I think that's something we ought to all be proud of. And one of the things that we're here to talk about today actually is fiber quality.
Absolutely.
And how do we make fiber quality better? How do we preserve fiber quality? Because to get the very best return from the genetics and technology and the packages that farmers buy today, I think fiber quality is one of the things that's very important to be aware of in the system. We talk about PGRs and we talk about all this other management stuff. That's the product we're selling. We got to have a product with the value people want to buy.
And we can influence it to some degree with our management schemes in regards to fiber quality.
What's your pet fiber quality? I'd say this. What's your biggest concern in fiber quality?
Especially, I've had the opportunity to work across the Cotton Belt, talk to a lot of people across the Cotton Belt. And yes, fiber quality is important everywhere. Don't get me wrong. It feels like, at least in the environment that I work in, we always, with some of the stresses that we have, nighttime temperature, mostly 90% dry land environment there, being that we have the first cotton that's getting picked every year, there's some interesting contracts sometimes out there in regards to what the grower is looking for in regards to the fiber quality package of a variety. So I would say, the old adage of what are the top 3 things people look for in a variety? A lot of people are going to say yield, and yield, right? I would say in my environment, it's probably yield, and fiber quality. Or you could even almost call it a 50-50, 60-40 split between yield and fiber quality. So, and sometimes in how we manage cotton, how we grow cotton in the region that I work in and how varieties fit, we can have varieties that yield very, very well, but the way that they're managed, the fiber quality is what gets them at the end.
So the fiber qualities that we concern ourselves with the most, I kind of go from, I guess, the ones that we influence with management the least to the most.
Yep.
And you think about the length and strength or two that are primarily dictated by genetics and influenced by environment on some level.
Absolutely.
The next one on my list would be trash, and that's sort of a defoliation, timing, growthiness interaction that goes on there. A good job of defoliation with not much regrowth typically results in less trash. And there are parts of that can't be changed some years. You get regrowth or you get frost, and
Well, it goes back to a prior conversation we had on PGRs.
Yeah.
Setting that plan up and just managing it for success.
yeah, make it kind of defoliate itself
Yeah.
on some level, run out of steam, in other words. But that brings us, as I was talking to Scott earlier and have over the years, there is one influence we have there, and it's probably, in my conversations with folks, it's the least well understood component of all of that, and that's Micronaire.
Micronaire, absolutely.
And is that an issue? And
Yeah, we have both ends of the spectrum sitting here because
talk about a contrast.
Talk about a contrast, and from that perspective, we are definitely a high mic environment where I live and work in regards to cotton production. Whereas,
Boy, we run into a lot of low mic.
Yeah, I think about varieties that we sell or that we've sold over the years in Texas in general, and it's kind of interesting. I kind of have to watch what's going on with some of the varieties in West Texas, because if they run into low mic issues with a variety, a lot of times, at least the way cotton's grown in my part of the world and managed, that variety I probably need to look at.
Maybe just right for you.
Because it might be just right for Southern Texas production.
Yeah, and I bring that up primarily because in my conversations, and even to me until I got sort of mid-career, I guess, Micronaire was one of those magical things that everybody talked about. Nobody really bothered to stop and explain what it was and what influences could potentially be.
That's right.
And I think it's worth mentioning in this conversation, what is Micronaire? And the way that I characterize it to people is it's two words, micron and air. And it's basically a known quantity of fibers that we draw air across. High micronaire cotton means it's a coarse, well-developed fiber that a lot of air flows through.
Correct.
That's basically think about what stops up your air conditioning filter in your house. It's not rope.
Correct.
It's small, thin pad hairs and fuzz and dust and all that smaller stuff that gets on the filter. Where low micronaire cotton is typically less well-developed, finer, somewhat more difficult to spin because it breaks, those kinds of fibers. And you got both ends, and the thing that the people that buy cotton for spinning want is kind of the Goldilocks. Mm-hmm. They want the one that's in the quote-unquote premium range for the reasons. The other part of that conversation that's very important to understand, you got an issue in South Texas with typically high micronaire for a lot of reasons. You just wind up with a lot of well-developed, coarser fiber. You in West or North Texas, you wind up with less well-developed fiber a lot of times because you run out of time or you get frost or whatever. But it's also a distribution of the fibers on the plant.
Correct.
You can't mature out those upper bowls and outer positions.
Because you think about it, the typically well-developed larger bowls in the bottom of the plants are higher micronaire. The middle is average and the top's lower relatively. It's all a relative sort of a scale.
Yep.
You defoliate it all at one time, you mix it all together with a cotton picker, mix it all together with a gin, and then mix it together again in the mill, and you wind up with the average of whatever the crop was. And there are regional influences over all of that, but there's also a management influence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's something we've observed in the Delta, particularly with some varieties. And I don't mean to not mention the varietal genetic component of that.
That's key.
Because there are some varieties that tend to drift higher than others.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So what do y'all do to manage that? How do you manage this whole affair in your territories?
I would say us in South Texas, if we have a known variety, one that we have to watch out for, let's say
21, 27,
something like that. Ultimately, it's knowing that variety genetically, the genetic piece to that variety, and usually a timely defoliation. As I've, like I mentioned earlier, worked in different areas and seen how defoliation happens in all different parts of the cotton belt over the years, and there's a lot of times that just the way things are for us, we wait too long, in my opinion, to defoliate.
And that's not anybody's fault. That's kind of how it's happened in history.
Yep.
But it turns out as we accumulate the sort of crops we're accumulating today with the genetics that we have a focus in the Delta pine breeding process of fiber quality. I mean, that's the first thing you get you kicked out of one of them.
Yep.
But you still have to manage the crop regardless of all of that. That's kind of the bottom floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got other influences of interaction with environment, fruit accumulation, all of those things that you have to acknowledge. And really that timely defoliation becomes very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Of course, and for us, it's a stressful year. Like I mentioned, mostly dry land acres. We have good moisture going into fruit set. We start setting positions, obviously lower down on the plant and working our way up. Well, if we get into those Texas summer heat that we typically get, and of course, where we're at down on the coast, especially where a lot of cotton acres are, those high nighttime temperatures and all the humidity and everything that's going on, and there's instances obviously where we'll deplete our soil moisture very, very quickly, and as we're setting that fruit and end up shedding those young bolls
think
up
about
on top of the plant. And
think about how that interacts. You don't have the lower micronaire mix with the higher in the bottom.
Nope.
So you're biased toward that older population.
So you never get that younger fruit with that lower micronaire to mix in. So
So when do you recommend guys defoliate?
Well, I would say just kind of the typical, if you think about the different times of defoliation, whether it's percent open bowl, I guess, the old adage that 60% open bowl, or that 4 nodes above crack bowl, the uppermost harvestable bowl things along those sorts. That's I typically lean towards that, but it would surprise you if you were to be down there and see some fields that are 100% open that have not yet been defoliated, and in a lot of instances, even when you have good fruit distribution all the way up and down the plant.
That's not uncommon even in the Delta on some level, is we wind up, everybody's busy at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And they try to figure out how to stage cotton pickers and gins and module trucks and everything else. And it just, sometimes it slips by us and we wind up 80 or 90% open before we get ready to do it.
Yep.
And that's a recipe for high micronaire.
Yep.
And it may be that sacrifices a little bit of yield by going earlier than that, but it's not hard to make the difference up in fiber quality or the premiums associated with being in that premium range.
That is correct.
And that's anymore. You look at the loan chart, it's more about minimizing those discounts. And micronaire, there's some hefty discounts.
Some big ones.
Yes.
Big ones, especially on low micronaire.
On both ends, but particularly on low micronaire.
Yep.
So I kind of give the folks guidance around here. You use whatever technique you like, but be aware of the fact you need to be out there probably sooner than you have historically. Just think about your fields and the accumulation of yield.
I would agree. I would agree.
I tell them be ready at 50 and have it done when you get on over toward 60 and 70, in that range.
Mm-hmm.
But the real point of it is not to establish a finite point. It's realize it needs to be done. And it's one of those things, and basically all it does is it slows or stops that fiber development.
Yep.
And you blend it all together and wind up with the average that suits you economically and yield-wise.
Exactly. And we've done a little bit of work over in Texas from the standpoint of defoliation timing and those types of things, looking at with some known varieties, 3 or 4 different varieties, certain ones that we know have a lot more stable micronaire across that environment, some that we know are going to be higher, and defoliate at those different timings, 30, 60, 90% open, and be able to show that influence on the fiber quality parameters.
We've actually done some work here at the Learning Center where we did that with a known set of varieties. And
I think Jay, I'm going to ask you today. I think maybe that'd be a good thing maybe this fall to do.
Well, we actually
got some room for it.
Don't know. I'll have to see. Probably.
Keep that in mind.
It would be good.
Well, we actually did a test 2 years ago. I think it was 2 or 3. Where we defoliated it, like you said, 30, 60, and 90, basically.
Yeah.
And at 60, we were able to lower micronaire some amount. I don't know if it's like half a unit or not quite half a unit. That did in a few varieties. It penalize yield some, and you got to acknowledge that and understand that that's a potential downside if you don't do it correctly.
If you don't do it correctly, right.
But the thing I would encourage everybody to do too is acknowledge the fruiting profile of your plants when you decide these things. Because think about considering it's a distribution of Micronaire up and down the plant. What's the influence on the crop if the bottom bolls are missing?
We're going to get a chance to start running into some low mic.
Or lower mic.
Lower, yeah.
Depending on your region. Over here, we don't commonly get into lower mic, but it may reduce it some.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what happens if the middle's missing? Hopefully that's not going to happen because it's going to penalize yield.
Right.
But you're probably going to wind up kind of average.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we don't make a top crop? If the top's missing for whatever reason,
you may have an elevated mic.
You may have a higher Micronaire.
Have a higher Micronaire.
And all of these are very subtle cues and clues that you can use to go out in any individual field and look at it and say, I may have a potential issue here. I ought to think this through a little deeper. Or let's call somebody and talk through, is there opportunity to change what I intended to do to alter my end result positively?
Exactly. Hopefully. Yep.
So I think those are all points of awareness that are worthwhile going into this. I caution all the visitors that come to the Learning Center, please don't let your cotton naturally open 100%. That's not going to end well, particularly in some varieties.
Yeah. I use that same phrase quite often with customers and growers in my area.
Start thinking through storm tolerance, weathering of the fiber. Now you start affecting color.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of factors that, trying to have a timely harvest.
I was going to say, you look at the loan chart, what are your two biggest influences on loan price? Color and leaf grade. And you mentioned it earlier, we can influence that fiber quality to some degree, or that in regards to hopefully not getting the big discounts or whatnot on either end. And that kind of goes back to the good job of defoliation too, and timely defoliation. We can influence that leaf grade, so on and so forth. There's not enough premiums to make up for, a bad leaf grade, and color's obviously highly environmental.
Probably the most environmental.
It's the most environmental fiber quality parameter there is, but that's I've had conversations before with folks, and to realize that, hey, here's what my cotton, here's how it ginned out, here's the quality. Why is it? I'm looking at it like, how do I understand? Why did this do this? And it's like, well, that color, that color and leaf will really get you. You can't come back from that.
And you overlay that with Micronaire, and you really got a problem. And so we talked about South Texas mostly. Tell us about West Texas.
Yeah,
what's your mitigation strategies for trouble?
So we do wait. We don't want to hit it before 60% open or 4 nose above crack bulb. Just trying to let those upper bolls mature a little bit more, increase that Micronaire. So when we do blend it all together, that we try to get into that premium range or base range. So got a few people that like to try to go early, just trying to stay ahead. They'll try to hit it 6-7 nodes above crack bulb, but just really being timely with those applications. And like you mentioned, really understand where that fruit set is, kind of just a basic understanding of, did we set those lower bowls, our, all of our money bowls, or what about that top crop? What are we trying to achieve there?
So you have, and I suppose earliness is pretty important in that environment.
Absolutely.
That way you try to mitigate the influence of frost and run out of heat at the end.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So anything else y'all want to add about defoliation or for the good of the cotton industry? Well, what I would say is to the audience, we are here doing this work. We're here in Scott this week talking about cotton in depth. We are training about a bunch of other things. We just wanted to put out a moment of awareness here about this because we're coming into defoliation time in parts of the country, and we'll be coming into it across the country before it's over.
Be here quick.
And no matter how these lessons accumulate over time or what region they're really targeted toward, there are concepts and basics involved in all of it that are probably applied to every region. And if there's anything anybody can do to help you in Delta Pine or Bayer, contact one of us. We'll get you in touch with the right person.
Yep, give us a shout.
Yeah. So that would, go ahead.
Oh, no, I said absolutely reach out to your local reps.
I would say this. We're just getting into tour season here around the Learning Center, and I'm biased, I guess. I have to talk about the Learning Center a little bit.
Understandable.
We've got a beautiful crop. Not to brag, but it's beautiful.
Oh, it is.
We've got the plant bugs beat back out of it. We've got picks where we wanted picks and none where we didn't want some. And we've got all sorts of things in the field, from new herbicide technologies to PGR trials in cotton and population studies in corn. Our tour season is booking up and getting to be rather full, but we always have time for one more. And if you'd like to come see us, contact your local Bayer person or call me directly, and everybody's invited. So with that, I think we'll close out this episode. I appreciate you guys making it all the way over here to talk to us.
Oh, yeah. No, I appreciate you having us. I do have one quick thought.
Yeah.
You got my 1822 out there again this year?
No, I got
2644.
2644 this year.
All right.
My 1822 didn't come in. And what he's talking about is, my history is with biotech traits. I go way back before Bogart had a name. So I have to remember the old days. And in every one of these trials, well, not every one, but a lot of the trials we have here, I leave an XF only or a non-Bogart variety as my worm lab, basically.
I always enjoy seeing it.
Well, I mean,
it gives you an appreciation for it.
It gives me a joy to let the worms eat up a little bit of it.
There's people in the industry that don't remember how it was before.
Yeah. If we have that conversation every spring with somebody that says, I'm going to plant some non-Bogart, my prediction is you're probably going to remember tobacco budworms rather quickly, because that's going to get expensive.
Absolutely.
And it's, to me, I have a class of interns around here most summers, and they have learned over time, almost defensively, be careful asking insect questions. Because you'll get a good lecture at lunch that day. We go out in that non-Bogart or the XF plot. Not only is it good genetics, we try to generate stuff for a lot of markets. We go out there and find worms and dissect mandibles and look at CD on abdominal segments and all that nerdy stuff I like to do as a bug person.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. And I told this on one of the podcasts earlier, and I'll mention it again, just as a close for that. Several years ago, my crew came in with a moth in a coffee cup. They had two coffee cups kind of nested together, and they were so excited. They'd found a moth. And they said, this is a cool moth. Tell us what it is. It was a budworm moth.
Mm-hmm.
None of them knew what it was.
Yep.
That tells you how far the world has come.
Yes.
But they are still around, and you can believe everybody got a good talking to that day at lunch.
Oh, I can only imagine.
They know more about virescens than most of the world. And by the way, I will never get over the changing of Heliothus virescens to a different scientific name.
No.
I refuse to participate. Anyway, thank y'all for listening. Thank you for coming. I'm coming to Texas next week to talk to y'all.
Yeah, I heard you were going to be over in that neck of the woods.
I'm going wandering almost all the way across the state of Texas next week.
If you want to stay and you need a character witnesses, I'm sure
I may need a reference.
You got some good.
Bring
folks.
some rain boots. I'm hoping for some rain.
Well, we get some outside, sounds like now.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for listening. If we can help you, get in touch with us. We'll be happy to try. So we'll see you down the road.